try this first. Can you hear me in the back?
Yes.
Okay. Please be seated. I begin this morning by taking a moment to acknowledge the hurt in the world. The hurt that sits with those of you joining us online, and the hurt that is carried by those of us in this room. I want to take a moment to acknowledge what I imagine is true for many of us here, that we gather today feeling tired, sad, angry, and even scared. Wherever we are, whatever we're feeling, let us bless that. Let us bless our real selves, our real feelings, and the real moments of this world as we come hurtling into yet another week, another day, another hour. Let us bless our reality without pretense or performance. So I invite you to join me in closing your eyes and taking a slow, deep breath and feeling yourself drop into your body. And then take another breath and feel yourself sit deeper into God's embrace, knowing and trusting that it is there. And then let us lament with all those who are touched by gun violence. Let us lament the shooter's choice for violence. Let us lament laws that allow violent men easy access to guns. Let us lament this nation's politicians' cowardice and complicity that stymie the efforts of those who work for change. Let us lament with the hearts broken by loss, today, yesterday, or years ago. Let us lament all the lives cut short by gun violence, poverty, and oppression. Let us lament, O God, and then let us rise from our knees to work for change. In the name of Christ, the Prince of Peace. The world is on fire, literally and figuratively. And for many of us, our water buckets are low or empty. Our fuse boxes are overloaded, and there simply is not enough room or power to plug in one more thing. And yet, there is no stemming the flow of that which needs our attention, our prayers, and our righteous anger. So I invite you to breathe in the gift of God's grace, to know that it is okay to tend only to what is yours, to say what is yours to say, to care only about what is yours to care about. Let that grace fill you. Let it flow through you, a blessing to those you meet. Because we are living in a vortex of swirling confusion. What was unthinkable has become expected. What had previously been understood as the moral high ground is now called out as unconscionable. We, as a country, and even some of us as individuals in this room, have been here before. I ask you to bring to mind 1965. President Johnson's institution of the Great Society, Rogers and Hammerstein's Cinderella on living room televisions, the New York World's Fair, the British invasion of the Beatles, space exploration, Sandy Koufax's Perfect Game, the debut of Charles Schulz's Charlie Brown Christmas, Bob Dylan, the Voting Act of 1965, the National Foundation of the Arts and Humanities Act, the Water Quality Act, Hurricane Betsy, the death of Winston Churchill, the overboil of American involvement in Vietnam, draft card protests across college campuses, Bloody Sunday, Selma, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the assassination of Malcolm X. A great optimism for a new dawning of American culture burdened by the weight of fear, hatred, and upheaval. We've been here before, and we have stumbled and wrestled and fought and risked and risen to the occasion. And we have made it to the next shore. 1965 was nearly 60 years ago. And even so, we do not have to look long through news headlines to make connections, fortunate and unfortunate, with the social, political, and artistic culture of today. Social, economic, racial, and gender inequalities and disparities ashamedly still exist in our culture. And activist voices, experienced and those newly emerging, are being raised in protest. And on occasion, leaders in political and social spheres occasionally pierce through the din with promises of change and pleas for hope. Before we allow ourselves to fall backward into deceptively comfortable partisan positions, let us be clear that the acts of social, political, and cultural resistance come to us directly out of the Bible. Today's story from Acts as one example. As Paul and Silas are making their way through the Roman colony of Philippi in Macedonia, we are introduced to a girl who is enslaved on the account of the economic gain her gift of fortune-telling provides her enslaver. Paul calls the spirit out of the girl, putting an end to her enslaver's revenue stream. And Paul and Silas quickly find themselves thrown in jail in the innermost cell, feet fastened in stocks, on trumped-up charges of, essentially, disturbing the peace, a crime most often reserved in prosecuting when it involves those who are different from those in positions of power. Paul and Silas are dragged, attacked, stripped, beaten, flogged, and left to die. And what do? They pray and they sing hymns to God. Rejoice always and everywhere, no matter how grim things may seem, Psalm 97 tells us. For in rejoicing, even in our bleakest hour, we resist the small g gods of fatalism and despair. All of this Sunday's readings tell us of resistance to the status quo as a form of Christian discipleship. In the story of Acts, Paul and Silas resist the socioeconomic norm, which would have us believe that economy is more important than humanity. We do not know what songs or hymns Silas and Paul sang that day and late into the night. But many of us do know something of the songs that were at the heart and soul of the civil rights movement in this country. As someone with a past life as a board-certified music therapist, I will attest that song, when music and words are paired together, has powers to communicate and infiltrate the mind that far exceed either music or words alone. And so it comes to me as no surprise that the same power that gave strength to those who fought for their own and others' rights and freedoms in the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s would also bring liberation and healing to Paul, Silas, and their jailer and his family, moving them closer to unity with one another, resisting the evils of isolation and segregation, calling them into communion with one another as Christ and God are one. On this day, we mourn and remember those whose lives have been ended by the violence of guns and war. May we too find ways to join with others in song, praising God, trusting that the vortex of swirling confusion is not ours to stay, that with God's help, Christ's love, and the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, we will come to that place unified in love of God, of neighbor, and of self. I ask you to pray with me. Living God, long ago faithful women and men proclaimed the good news of Jesus' resurrection, and the world was changed forever. Teach us to keep faith with them, that our witness may be as bold, our love as deep, and our faith as true. May poets and prophets and policymakers arise in holy courage and conviction. May psalmists and pragmatists and pastors cry out for justice. May we hold the powerful wicked ones accountable and turn guns into garden tools. May we gather around the grieving in strong love that protects. May we not give in to despair. May we contend for the vulnerable. May we be a thorn in the side of the enemy that seeks to kill, steal, and destroy. Because it doesn't have to be this way. Humanity has built the systems. We can take them down. We can take them